Hello and welcome to another edition of Press Row on Rivalry Family Media. I'm Todd Robbins. Happy to have you along with us and happy to be joined today by Vice Principal of Fitchburg High School and Head Football Coach, Tom DiGeronimo. Tom, great to have you here. Great to see you during what has been a strange time, to say the least.
Yeah, thank you, number one, Todd, for having me. Yeah, it's great to see you. I miss seeing people, I'll tell you. This has become a new norm, these type of video chats, and I don't think I ever want to get used to them, to tell you the truth.
You and I are on the same page on that one, but at least if nothing else came out of it, the ability to have some great conversations on things that, perhaps we don't have the opportunity to do, and maybe in a grander scale. And we'll get into some of that across the athletic spectrum and hopefully try to pick some spirits up here, try to talk about something that is not COVID related. But of course, when you talk about the world of athletics, it's hard to avoid it, as not only was the spring 2020 season evaporated through these decision-making processes that had to ultimately be made, but the preparation for next year also gets kind of lost in this whole conversation as well. I had another coach on the program in Leominster lacrosse coach Colin Davis and Leominster football coach Devin Gates, who both said, each in their own way, they talk about the cliche being champions are made kind of out of the limelight, in the shadows, when people aren't looking. That may be the story of what comes up this coming fall, is what did kids do? What did players of all different stripes do when nobody was looking?
Yeah, true. Really true. It's talk about, this is really testing your self-motivation. It's testing your mindset, that can you stay in a routine of getting up, getting some schoolwork done, getting some type of workout in, getting your body moving. So it's a test. And these kids today have so many other distractions, as far as, video games and social media, that, it's easy to get on a video game for 3 hours and then realize it's 5 o'clock, or, it's 1 o'clock in the morning, to tell you the truth. It's hopefully that you've instilled, these values in your kids, and these routines, that they're continuing to do, what they were doing up until we left on March 13th.
I think people too so undervalue, they think about the high school athletic season seasonally, one third, one third, one third. You've got your fall season, your winter season, your spring season, and nobody really considers how that summer off season kind of connects the two halves of the year, or connects one season to the next. And for football, that off season is so important, especially for players who are looking to maybe make a step, to grow their game, to improve their skills, or increase their strength or their conditioning. With this point in time, and of course this kind of bond being broken, I mean, that one thing I know just from looking at the Fitchburg football social media account is your weight room is a happening place to be. Yeah. And right now it's all quiet. How do you kind of bring that to, each individual player from distance?
Well, I think, like I said, our weight room it's an important place to our kids. And, I can't say enough about, the job Charlie Raff and Grant Jensen, two really unsung guys, as far as when you get into strength and conditioning and motivating students. I mean, Charlie yourself, and what he did in Leominster. Those guys do a great job, and they're still, they're doing their best, as far as staying in contact with our kids, as far as sending workouts, and getting feedback from our students. So they've kept the lines of communication open. But, you talk a lot about, it's where you improve your body. But to me, it's more about discipline. It's about getting there, about being there, about getting your workout in. That to me is the important thing. It's just disciplining yourself to, continue on that routine. And, our kids know the expectations, that's part of their job, is they've got to, spend time in the weight room. And again, it's great camaraderie, it's great team building, but, to have that routine interrupted, I know myself, I'm very rigid with the routine I have, but for kids, it's just, they don't need any other distractions. I mean, they have enough that's going on in their lives right now. And, I'm just hoping, I think our kids are going to be very excited when, and hopefully we do go back, soon into our weight room. I know it's probably going to look different, depending on, what restraints have been lifted, how many people can be, in a group. And again, if the educational, Department of Ed even allows this to happen. So there's so many unanswered questions. And, I tell our kids, control what you can control. And that's your effort and that's your attitude. And we can't control what's going on and with this virus. And we just got to move forward and just do what's best for you.
That camaraderie, that football is family piece. And I think about what you're talking about in the weight room, and just players being around one another and developing this kind of comfort and rapport. And in some cases, it's the ability to just look at each other and communicate. And that translates so well when you actually get on the field into your skill. And that develops at this point in time in the weight room and in the off-season workout plans, that students implement. Now that, the world has kind of pushed people apart, and it's very, to me, seemingly very difficult for that football is family mentality to develop. How can a team develop that family mentality, even though they have to be physically distant from one another?
Well, I mean, I think, again, with social media and texting, we encourage our kids to have, group chats, social media. So, we really encourage them at this time to use what's, available. I mean, our kids can have Google Hangouts. They have group chats. They constantly are in communication with one another. And this is a great time to really separate who your leaders are and who's going to hold who accountable amongst holding yourself accountable. And, those are very important characteristics for that we want our kids to develop. And, accountability is not discipline. I mean, accountability is making everybody better around them. So, we try to spin it that way with our kids, that it's not punishment. It's being there for one another. And we try to get them to reach out to kids they normally wouldn't. Again, I'm in contact because of my role, not only with our football kids, but also with our students in our school. And, my caseload, believe it or not, is 3/4 of the school population having, because we divide by class. So, there's a lot of contact going on with kids, and we just, make ourselves available and let them know, hey, you need something, you've got to reach out.
In some cases, advocating for yourself can be so vitally important, and maybe more so even now. And I think about what you were talking about, sending workouts home, trying to, build some kind of a knowledge base. And of course, that's something that your coaching staff can share when you're in that controlled environment, and they can use technology to try to push those items out. But I think about just the physical equipment alone. I mean, so lucky are you when you're in an educational athletic environment where you have those weight rooms available to you, and the
Right.
way in this case, in this distanced environment, you almost have to be creative, back to the old school movie-esque, pulling a truck or a tractor or something like that along the way to try to build strength along this time period.
Right. I mean, you have to be very creative. It's not like, I know like when I was in high school, the big thing was Herschel Walker and how many push-ups he did, and he didn't lift weights. And, you've got to, it's tough for kids to grasp that versus what they see today. I mean, everything's in the weight room and guys lifting all this weight. And, so you have to be very creative to get them to, do things like push-ups, sit-ups, and the other exercises that are sent out to them. You're not going to, and the tough thing is you're not going to see I don't believe you're going to see as far as the gains, that you would normally see if you are in the weight room. So, again, it's a lot of self-motivation. What do you want? You can't let this opportunity just pass you by and think, well, you know what, they're going to let us, get together in August for the first time. And, 6 months have gone by and I haven't done anything. So, it's just continue to build our core values that we believe, in our program. And hopefully our kids, again, they're pushing each other and, staying motivated. And, obviously, our coaches do a great job as far as staying in contact with our kids.
When you have, obviously, either through your capacity as vice principal or as a coach or just as a mentor to these student athletes, what are the kind of feedback that you're hearing from them? What is it that they're reacting most to as you've gone through this process?
Well, believe it or not, they all really miss school. They miss seeing one another. They miss seeing their teachers. The staff in the school. They miss, being together in the weight room after school. They really, really miss that. And some kids are struggling with the whole online learning. I mean, there's kids who do much better with a pen and paper, and having somebody up in front of them demonstrating or delivering a lesson. So, that's a struggle. That's what I'm hearing quite a bit, from our kids. Just being together is the big thing that they're really missing.
People so underestimate that. I've made this comment a couple of times where I think what I hope we'll see on the other side of all of this is maybe that a newfound appreciation for, we say often, to kids, athletics are a privilege, extracurriculars,
Right.
co-curriculars, they're a privilege. Not everyone gets access to those kinds of things or those opportunities, but I think perhaps now they may have even appreciated it a step farther, which is education is a privilege, and it's something that maybe we don't pay enough attention to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes that gets lost, how important education is, and that we're not just going to school to socialize or, even play athletics. That, your education is the key to your future, and that's what, every step you take opens a different door for you. And, just the value of being there every day, with our kids, you know, a lot of them, believe it or not, they get 3 meals a day. They get a meal, breakfast, lunch, and then they get a meal to take home or something after school. They have, interaction with adults, people that care about them, people that want to see them succeed. And I think, sometimes we take that for granted, and I think sometimes kids take it for granted that, people get into education to help kids. And I think sometimes we forget that as adults when they're not in front of us, so we don't see them. That, I didn't get into this to, do my job, via computer or Google Hangouts. I did this to interact with kids every day and hopefully shape them to be, productive and successful citizens. So, now that this has happened, it's going to be, I think when it's all said and done, that we need to sit down and reflect, about, what we missed, and moving forward, how can we make ourselves better moving forward and making our community better.
You bring to light something that I think is somewhat undervalued in this conversation, which is, of course, just how that interaction, how important coming to a school is for a student, not just a student athlete, but a student in general. Kate says this quite often, about her students, which is, for a lot of kids, this is the best part of their day, is crossing that threshold and being in an educational environment for 6 hours a day.
Right. And I have two hats, because I have a son, that's a junior in high school, and he loves going to school every day. I mean, he gets up, he walks to school. We live close enough for him to walk, and he walks home, and and I know what it's done for him. And just that interaction with the friends he has, it's just not great. It's just, I just hope that, come the fall, that that first day of school, we're out greeting kids, walking into the building. And I know it's not going to be the same, but, I'm hoping it's close as can be, because these kids are really, I just, I worry about them. I worry about, I know our population very well and the number of students, but I just, I worry that, you know, is this could make and break some kids. What if, we're not back in the fall? What happens to that group of seniors moving forward? Are they just going to say that, the heck of it and give up, and not finish what they started? So, there's a lot of unanswered questions, and I'm just hoping, in the coming months, that there is some type of idea that we can start preparing. It's like athletics, you prepare physically, but I'm telling you, the mental part is more important than anything. And I know me personally, it's like a roller coaster. Some days you're up, next day you're down. And I can't imagine what, some of these kids are going through.
No question about that, indeed. And I've tried to, as you talk about putting plans together, and we of course talk about, what the game of football looked like. I saw a post on social media, maybe a couple of weeks back, and it was a picture from back in that 1918 Spanish flu time period. It was a picture from a college football game. So the sport of football was not only active, it was played. It was played with crowds wearing masks. I mean, the pictures were pretty enlightening when you now flash forward to a situation where we're talking about athletics being either not contested, which is, of course, the current situation that we're in, or in the long term, potentially contested without audiences present, which of course could change the entire feeling, of course, of an athletic event, large or
Right.
small. Having somebody there, that kind of buzz that's around the athletic environment, I think that's all part of creating what that special world of athletics is. So trying to imagine what this could look like in 2020, or the idea of, would a mask even help a football player? The one thing I said about the post that didn't help was you didn't show me what the football players looked like, on the post. I saw
Right.
what the crowd looked like, but what did the
Right.
player look like in 1918? With the mask, not a mask? I just can't imagine.
And the thing too, Todd, I think that we hear so many mixed messages. So, you know, obviously that's a lot different than it was back then. That, there's so many things being said, and there's so much uncertainty, and you don't know what to believe, what to think. That um, I don't know. I don't know. I can't imagine what's coming down the road. I'm glad I'm not making those decisions. But because I mean, social media has got its positives and negatives, and I think the negative aspect is that things are being said that we don't know that are true. And what do we do? And until we hear it with some certainty, then I'm just gonna. It's day by day for me, and again, control what you can control. And hopefully our kids everybody has the opportunity, whether you're football, soccer, field hockey, golf, that you have the opportunity to participate and compete in the fall.
No question about that. And when we think about competition in the fall, this is no time like the present to talk a little hot stove here and have the good fortune of exchanging text messages with Athletic Director Craig Antossi from Fitchburg High. And I asked him to send over a copy of the tentative schedule here, which kind of gives us a little indication of hopefully what we'll be looking at down the road, just a few months
Right.
from now. And as I took a look, the first thing that jumped out at me about your tentative schedule for the fall was this week 1. And I know it's something that is kind of preparing things for the future, and people maybe branching out and getting beyond maybe Central Massachusetts a little bit to prepare for that state tournament you and I will talk about in a couple of minutes. And your first game is going to be a field dedication day on the road at Scituate High School, which will certainly give you a newfound feeling on a Friday night taking a ride to Scituate.
Yeah, we're excited. Like a lot of teams, we were looking for week 1, and they were there looking for a game. They were state champs 2 years ago in Division 5. They played, I believe, Plymouth South, who beat Tantascwa. It was like a 13-7 game. They have great tradition. They have a very strong sophomore class. And again, being on the road, going to Scituate on a Friday, probably battling traffic going to the Cape will be a huge challenge. But you know what? Last year we decided to head out to West Springfield and travel week 1. And you know what? I like the idea of getting on the road. I think it's a great indicator, what you're in store for. You get your kids a little out of their comfort zone of playing at home. So, we're excited for the challenge. They're very good, very well coached. And, it's going to be a very interesting week 1 that, hey, it was a game. We wanted to take it. And, I will be better for it. I believe we're going to be better for it as the year goes on.
I'm certainly glad that you like those road games. 5 out of those first determined 8 weeks will be on the road away from Crocker Field. You'll be getting the mileage on the buses for sure. In this one, your second week takes you down to Tantascwa, and then you'll get a couple of home games, and then you go on the road at Algonquin, at North Middlesex, finish those first predetermined 8 weeks at Westboro. So you're going to play a number of those key league games that obviously help to set the table on the road in the middle to tail end of that first 8 weeks.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, I'm not the schedule maker, but you know what? The games are scheduled and you got to play them. And that's why I think, even when we scrimmage, we don't scrimmage at home. We go on the road and scrimmage. And, again, it's getting our kids used to the bus. It's getting used, changing up their routine, which is obviously different when you're playing away, versus when you're playing home. So, hopefully week 1, we'll answer a lot of questions as we move to later in our schedule when we're playing on the road, to finish up the year.
Those 3 home games that you do have are 3 major matchups in your season. Great to have at Crocker Field. Wachusett coming in, Marlboro coming in the very next week. So that's weeks 3 and 4. And then in week 7, a playoff matchup from last year reunited, and that's Neshoba coming into Crocker Field as well. If you're going to have 3 home games and only 3 home games, those are 3 that it would be positive to have in front of your home crowd.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, the schedule did work out that, we are playing, Wachusett, and they're excellent. I mean, they're very well coached. They're a very good football team. It will be a huge challenge for us. And then playing Marlboro and Neshoba, who, battled the last, 2 or 3 years, to be the rep into the state playoffs. So, they're well-established programs, and, it'll be good to play them at home, rather than playing them on the road. What we did last year at 3:00 again, which was, we probably should have seen this coming with these 3:00 games last year and everything else that was happening. But, like I said, people make the schedule, the games have to be played, and, we'll just, hopefully our kids will be, we want to be hitting our best football, from week 3 on, when we really find, what type of team we're going to be.
You alluded to it a moment ago, talking about obviously what last football season was like with, the threat of Triple E and mosquito-borne illness that it threw the schedules completely up in the air, and put athletics into this strange lens. And now here we are, 6 or so months later in this environment, and then looking on the doorstep at another football season. And I feel like it's put athletics in this strange lens, and kind of put it in this, perhaps in perspective, I suppose, in life in a lot of ways, but it has made it very difficult, where you almost feel like you're shoehorning in athletics, because it's almost having to be played under duress because of all the other things that are pushing in on it.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, you have no control over things. It's like you're going in sometimes blinded. You get a call on Monday, well, the game's been moved to 3:30 Friday. Okay, now we got to get kids out of school. We got to make sure they're fed. I mean, there's just so much uncertainty right now, that, and on the other hand, you can't dwell on it. I mean, you only control what you can control, and, be positive, and, just, hey, these are opportunities that you got to take advantage of. We tell our kids, I mean, you got to take advantage of the opportunities that are given. I mean, I just think of this poor, senior class right now that just had everything taken away. I mean, it was just taken away, and, how they must be feeling. And, it's, you just can't take things for granted, and I truly believe that.
I've tried to come up with a parallel in some case here, either athletically or educationally, and I don't have it. I don't have a parallel for it. You have many more years on me as veteran status in education and athletics. Do you have any parallel? I mean, obviously, for a 100-year pandemic, I don't think any of us do. But do you have any parallel for this kind of a challenge?
No. I mean, the closest thing was the ice storm. I mean, when we were out of school for a week and just trying to, get kids situated, back to school, but nothing. I've never, and I hope I never ever again experience anything like that, or anybody, because it's just, it's turned things upside down, and, then you start questioning things, and, I just, like I said, I feel bad for the kids. I mean, they're really being tested right now, and, I'm just hoping that, we learn and we come out better for this.
We keep saying that to them all the time.
Yeah.
You will be better off for this. You don't feel it today, but you will
Right.
be better off for it at the end of the day. And coach, of course, that schedule that we were just talking about, not this particular season, although we'll be able to see kind of a preview of what things are going to look like as we're going to spend this next year, assuming everything returns to normal athletically, getting to study and kind of preview what the new Max Preps ranking process is going to look like, and what a potential statewide bracket or tournament ranking will look like 1 year from now. So this was one of those things that people were a little confused about, which is, of course, this next year is going to be kind of a preview learning year. You'll get to see how the numbers would shake out, but we're going to follow a lot more of the traditional methods with the Max Prep seating in place. And then 1 year from now, in the 2021-2022 year, that is where this new statewide tournament will be unveiled and become the governing aspect of things. Obviously, we haven't gotten a chance to talk about it. I'd love to hear your thoughts, obviously, on the idea of just opening this up and getting away from this, gone are the days of central Massachusetts and western and north-south out in the east. It's everybody is all together in football. It's likely going to be tournaments of 16 by division. How do you fall on this whole environment?
Well, I mean, my first thing is this: what's best for kids. I mean, that's the number one thing. I mean, it can be very exciting, but it's got to be done right. I just believe people have got to be put in the correct division, based on whatever, they've set up enrollment or whatever. I mean, the one thing I do agree, it's going to crown a true state champion. And I think that has been important, in the state of Massachusetts, because you have some divisions that, don't have, representatives from Central or Western Mass playing for a state title. And really, to me, it's like the old system, the old, Central, Western, Eastern Mass. Todd, we're going to play. I mean, I don't have any either way. I have no, as far as, what system is right. They still don't get it right in college football. So to complain and bad mouth it, it's not going to do you any good. I mean, we're going to play. Hopefully we're fortunate enough to be playing in the tournament. And that's why you play games with Situate. You play games with West Springfield, so you're used to getting on the road and traveling, whether it's 1-2 hours, for a football game, because, hopefully in doing this, that it's prepared us for a year from now, and we're fortunate enough to play in the state tournament. And it won't be a shock to our kids if we have to get on the bus and, travel somewhere in Eastern Mass, and that we've done it for 2 years now, and that we've prepared ourselves, the best way to go out and play the best football game. But, to sit here and say, oh, this and that, it does no good. I mean, if this is what they're going to do and they feel it's the best thing for kids, then you know what? Hopefully we're fortunate enough to be participating in the tournament next year, and representing our school and our city and making a run. So it will be exciting. But I just want to, hopefully they've done it with what's best for kids, and, based on, what they feel the matchups will be, you're going to get the best matchups.
Placement has been such an interesting thing to hear some of the different perspectives, and it's not so much, particularly in this region of the state, a case of people trying to find the best fit or the easiest path or anything like that. It's that different school districts have very different reasons. So when I spoke to both athletic directors, obviously here in the Twin Cities, they were both talking about needing some kind of a factor that's not population being included in the equation. And so it seems like the shortcoming in the placement piece is just using a number, whether it's your enrollment of boys if we're talking about football, or girls if we're talking about a female sport. And of course, they're discussing now the next kind of iteration of that is to just say, well, if you have 2,000 kids, you have 2,000 kids. And that's it. It doesn't matter. Boys, girls, we're going to rank everybody by that. But then you get into, of course, single gender schools. Those don't fit into that bucket neatly.
Right.
But, each, situation, particularly in this area, I was struck by, needs its own piece of consideration. So in Fitchburg, it was a case of, when AD Antossi was talking about things like, we're in meetings, next to Springfield and Fall River and Brockton. I'm going, and Fitchburg? Those items don't seem like they add up together. I mean, you're just smaller than any of those other examples that we're talking about population-wise. And then on the other side, when Leominster was, pointing out their AD, Coach Palazzi was talking about things like, the fact they have a tech school and how that tech school influences their participation. And so all of a sudden they have a factor. So then I guess what I came to realize in the discussions I've been having is that perhaps population is not the thing, or enrollment is not the item. So in your experience, what is the other item we could use? What kind of a metric could we use to really place people? Is it performance?
I honestly believe population has to play some type of role in this. And I'm not going to talk about any other schools, but we have a very unique population, and we're much different than I think we're much closer to the schools in Worcester than anybody around here. And, some people might disagree with that, but if you look at our demographics, you look at our poverty, we're different, and you look at, we have a good roster, but you don't realize how many kids have never even put on a helmet before. We have kids that's just participated, just moved in from Puerto Rico, the Dominican. So, I think the population does have to play a fact, but I think, performance, history. I mean, I don't know. How do you do it right when everybody's going to be happy? I mean, you look at the tech schools. I mean, they're so big, and yet they play in the lowest of lowest levels. And so I don't know, Todd. I don't have the answer for you. I'm sure, the people doing this, the committee are going to hopefully come up with what's best for kids. And I think if somebody has an argument, they should be given the opportunity to get in front of the committee and talk about, what the makeup of the school is, So again, that's where population, isn't great, because people don't understand, might not have an idea what Fitchburg High School is like, what our numbers break down to, between free and reduced lunch, our ELL population. So, I mean, I think in that case that they should be allowed to get in and speak to the committee, and have the opportunity to, share, this type of, information. But you know what? I think every competitor, to be the best, you want to play the best. So, it should never be used to move down a level because you want to just, you don't want to be challenged. You just want to, think automatically you're just going to go in and win. But, that stuff has a tendency to backfire on you too. So, I think there's, you got to look at many factors going into it. And, as I said earlier, if it's right and it's best for kids, and, then they should, it should go well. I mean, but I'm not the one who thinks everybody should get a trophy for playing in Little League either. So, we got to keep the competitiveness going with kids, and, working hard, and that, if you do the right things could, there could be, that opportunity to play in the playoffs, when it's all said and done. So, I'm sure there's arguments both ways. And, I feel like they've put a lot of effort into this, and I'm not going to criticize anybody with what's being done. But I think having a true state champion is the best thing for football, especially where it's disrupted. Thanksgiving's disrupted now. And, so then do it right, because that, that tradition, unfortunately, you see some teams that are playing for state championships and are not even playing their Thanksgiving game. So, hopefully they're doing what's best, and there's a lot of positives coming out of it.
You spoke a lot about your demographic population. And so I think the great part about these conversations is an opportunity to kind of educate those that aren't intimately involved in both education and athletics to those things that kind of are more nuanced, because they're sitting there going, well, what does it matter? Fitchburg and Leominster and Shrewsbury and Wachita, they've always been together, and St. John's has always been. Why wouldn't they be in these conversations together? But demographic populations, not only have they changed historically over a long period of time, but I think one of the things that you see more and more and more, I know I've gained a better appreciation of over the last handful of years, is opportunity cost, right? If you're from a demographic situation where perhaps you have an increased number of free and reduced lunch, or folks that live closer to the poverty line, they're not the ones that are able to go to the camps in the summertime, that can go, and be involved in, AAU or whatever the sports situation is, to get those opportunities. Like you said, in some cases, kids are coming to the school and have never played an organized sport in their life. And you have that opportunity to now provide that for them through educational athletics, but their skill development is going to be in a much, much different place.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I don't know any community that has changed as much as we have in the last probably 20 years. I'm not sure anybody can especially in this area. So it's getting our kids to understand the value of athletics, what you can learn, what it teaches you, and then the opportunity that if you become successful, there's opens doors of whether of going to college and further your education, that if you have you can use football or basketball or baseball to help you further your education. I mean, you should be doing it. It's teaching kids the life lessons that athletics provide for us outside of the classroom. But in reality, sports are an extension of your classroom. You're still teaching kids discipline and respect, accountability, all the things that they're going to need to be successful citizens when it's time to go out and get a job or move on to, the military or continue to further your education. You want them to have the skills to be successful at it and not give up when things don't go your way, being able to fight through adversity. So, there's so many lessons that, athletics teach us that, it's not just for entertainment. The entertainment value, yes, but, the life lessons that you can learn playing a team sport, they'll be with you for the rest of your life.
No question about that. I've been having a little fun with the coaches that I've interviewed here. So I'm going to throw out in any sport hypothetical here. You can apply it to your sport or not. I did not account for size in this conversation. I didn't, make any consideration about tradition. I took Fitchburg and Random Town X, and I'm going to pair them together for you. Tell me which of these you prefer. Fitchburg and Amesbury, Fitchburg Weymouth, Fitchburg Orleans, Fitchburg North Adams. Do those excite you the way that, say, Fitchburg North Middlesex, Fitchburg Neshoba, and Fitchburg Gardner have in years past?
No.
It's been my favorite part of every show. No. It has been a one-word answer from every coach. It's just something about that local, being here and being involved with it for as long as you have been. There's something to being involved with those local traditions.
I don't know anything about Orleans. I mean, Amesbury I passed by on the way to Maine, so it doesn't excite me too much.
I could certainly appreciate that. The other piece of this that, of course, we've been hearing about, and every system that, I've seen over the years has involved some kind of calculation, not just in placement, but then in formulating, obviously, whatever that tournament is going to be. And, in football, we've gone through a number of different systems. But the thing that I'm most interested to see and has developed, I think, the most interesting reaction has been this Max Preps rating system that is going to be implemented. And I've said it, and I will continue to say it. To me, Max Preps was like Wikipedia. Anybody could join it. Anybody could post anything on there they want. And it's now going to be steering the entire ship. I'm assuming the information is going to get better and obviously a lot more accurate in order to do this. But I've been surprised. People have fallen on both sides of this. They've said good things about the Max Prep system. And somewhat to my surprise, and other people have been kind of, where I am, which is kind of skeptical of this. Where do you see this new Max Prep system? It was coming regardless. They had already made this decision before they decided on the statewide tournament.
I think before you make any, honestly, before I'm going to make an opinion about it, I want to see how it works out. I mean, you got to give it a chance to see, how it works out. It's like the old BCS when a computer was making a decision who played for a national championship. And, we could probably go through and, pick out games that it didn't pair up the two best teams or whatever. So, you got to give it a shot and see, how things play out before you make it, before I'm going to make a decision, whether it's good or bad. I mean, obviously if it doesn't benefit you, you might have, sour grapes, but the bottom line is you got to go out, you got to prepare, you got to play each week. And you have to take care of your business before you start blaming others, for things, why this didn't happen or that didn't happen. So, you know what, I'm going to see how it plays out, and I'm going to wait before I form an opinion on whether I think it's good or bad. And I'm sure they're going to retool it and continue to do things to make it better. I just, sometimes you got to be careful if you're not using the human element in things. So hopefully they're not just going to, become, a computer and make decisions on, based on whatever, is it algorithm they come up with? I know I sounded probably a little bit more intelligent.
That's what I've been told.
Yeah. So, hopefully, again, I'll see how it works out year one, and then, what they need to do is allow coaches the opportunity for feedback.
Yep.
not just people on the committee. And we have to do a better job as coaches to provide that feedback, whether it's filling out surveys or sending in questionnaires. I can't complain about something if I just sit back and I don't, if they want a survey on it and I haven't filled it out, or they're looking for opinions, or if they're even looking for people to help with the whole process. So, I think let's see how it works out year one, and have to, and then, be open to take, the coaches, the guys that are actually, there Friday nights, their opinion on, what they feel is good and what they don't feel. But if you're solely going to base it on, it didn't benefit me because we didn't perform on the field, well, you have no opinion.
How hard is it? And I talk about this with folks involved in athletics a lot, because when you're trying to make decisions about what's best for your sport, whatever that sport may be, there is this kind of push-pull. There's the altruistic, what's best for the sport and what's best for students, but then there's the, well, what's best for my school and my students. Those two things aren't always, perfectly pieced together when you're trying to make these kinds of decisions.
No, you're absolutely right. And sometimes you get a little biased when you're really talking about my students. It's tough. It's like a tug of war. I just think it goes back to what we talked about, looking at everything when you're putting together these divisions, really looking at, every piece of information that's being, delivered to these people who make the decisions, and looking again, I mean, does this serve the general population of each school?
And hopefully in the end, something that is entertaining, enjoyable, and will be, of course, as you said, best for the student athlete ultimately in the end. When we're talking about, of course, best for the student athlete, we always say student is the front end of that. And education in this pandemic world, has certainly changed that dramatically. And, we were talking about this a little bit before we got started on the air here. And that was, of course, how your job on the daily as assistant principal has changed, obviously. I mean, beyond the classroom teacher, assistant principal at Fitchburg High School is very much a hands-on direct student interaction job. And obviously now you're doing that from home. And the students are doing that from home. How has that changed, obviously, that interaction between those two parties?
Well, you're so right about it. I know my position is, really the amount of kids I deal with on a daily basis, the amount of kids that are in my caseload is, it's big, but, I'm here for, I do what I do for the kids. So now it's become really more, I hate to say it, I'm spending more time, with our educators, sitting in on their, on their professional learning circles a lot, and getting feedback based on how engagement's going on, what students they haven't heard from. And then it's now take that and now start reaching out to students, whether it's actually, we're very fortunate, like Charlie Raff, I'll talk about Charlie for a second. Charlie's our attendance liaison, family liaison, where, we supply Charlie with names at the end of the week. And every Friday he goes out and, makes a home visit. Now it's a little different. It's more, knocking on the door, delivering a letter, whether it's delivering, Chromebooks for kids, or so we do. We meet a lot with our staff. We get a lot of information from our kids, and then we go about figuring out, okay, what's the best way to get some of these kids re-engaged in their education. And as I said earlier, because there was so much uncertainty when this first happened, thinking we were going to be back to school the following week, there was no plan in place. And that's not nobody's fault, because no one ever anticipated something like this was going to happen. So, what I feel now is we can learn what our best practices are, what is the best terms of engaging our students in their education in case this spikes up again, that we have is it going to be foolproof? No way. No way, but we're going to be better prepared, if this does spike up and that we have to leave school for a month, that, okay, we can hit the ground running because, X, Y, and Z was in place, and it worked out very well, and engagement picked up, and, kids understand now, okay, if I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, well, there's that chance I could lose credit. there's a chance that my grades can drop. And that was the tough thing because, anybody who turned on the TV earlier, that, we weren't grading work. It was just keeping kids engaged. And come on, what 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old kid, am I going to sit down and go on my Chromebook and do whatever assignment, or am I going to unfortunately play, video games, with my buddies? So, and it's no fault of them because again, we left with so many questions. But I think now that we have things in place and that we continue to have expectations for our kids, that we're going to be better prepared. And hopefully we're not in this situation. But again, who knows what school's going to be like, as we move forward. And if this, pandemic's not under control, what happens next? I'm just hoping that, we're all able to walk into our building some way, somehow in September and greet our kids and try to get it back as to normal as possible, because the kids I've talked to, they want to be in school, believe it or not. They miss their teachers, they miss that camaraderie, they miss that interaction with their friends and adults. And some of them, it's a survival mode with our kids, because again, as I said earlier to you, a lot of our kids depend on school, for meals and companionship and any type of socialization. So, it's been interesting, and it's a roller coaster. As I said, one day you're up, the next day you're down, and you just got to keep grinding and be there for the kids and staff too, because we tend to forget about teachers. I mean, they got into this business to work with kids face to face on a daily basis, not sit in a Google Hangout and hoping that kids show up, and then you got 3 kids. They got to remember, whether it's 1, 2, 3 or a class load, you're still making an impact. And I think sometimes again we lose sight of that we get discouraged because maybe 1 kid showed up for a Google Hangout. Well, there was 1 kid that needed you for that day, and we can't forget that, and we can't lose sight of why we got into the business of education, because you're right, it's education and the other stuff is secondary.
There is no lonelier moment than when you start that Zoom meeting or that Google Hangout and you're the only educator. You're just sitting there by yourself, hoping to see a class full of kids show up in the next minute or so. That's a really tough point for the educator as well.
Yeah, it is. But they have to remember, as I said, if it's 1 kid, you're making an impact on that 1 kid today. You're doing something to make their day better. So, and if it's just going in there and chatting about life, then hey, you did a good job.
No question about that. That's the piece that I think maybe, again, people from the outside looking in are like, well, you just get on there and just keep teaching lessons. Well, yeah, okay, under a circumstance. And again, maybe come September with the school year, if we knew today that, you weren't starting again in September, you were still going to be doing this virtual thing, there'd be the ability to lay out a plan like that where, you're going to pick up and start teaching. In this case, because as you put it so well, which was we were sent home on the 12th of March, thought we were going back 2 days later, and then we weren't. A very different place. It feels almost like more so than the content, that social emotional piece may be even more important in helping our students than getting them, 1 more page in a workbook or 1 more page in a, 1 more skill that, they could potentially use. Just keeping them balanced and giving them some form of normalcy even through the computer.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And again, this is an opportunity to build capacity. This is an opportunity to build a plan and not be discouraged, and be there, make sure that you're there for the adults. Need to be there for the adults too. I mean, and it's important that we continue to support one another and do the best we can. I mean, that's all we have to really look at right now. Nobody has cornered the market on this. I mean, it's amazing all of a sudden, I know my with my job, the number of emails that just come in about, this is the best way to do remote learning and this. But at the bottom line, kids need to be in a school with other kids and adults, and we do, we rely too much on phones as it is, as far as to communicate through text messaging, and that we forget about sitting down and having a conversation with somebody. So we just got to be able to be prepared for if this does spike up again, and support one another, and know that people are doing a good job. They're doing their best they can, and don't underestimate you know why we got into this business. I mean, we got into help kids, and we got to continue to do and fight through, and not get discouraged if things aren't going to go well. You're going to have, as a teacher, you have that lesson that absolutely bombs. I mean, you can't feel sorry for yourself. You got to go back, look at what you didn't do well, and fix it, and continue to improve. And we got to continue to improve on this type of learning. But I just hope and pray that we are back in September, because people need to be around people. I truly believe that. And like you said, there's so many kids with social and emotional issues. This is just compounding it right now, and not having that outlet, that favorite teacher, that one person you can go to. It's really, it's discouraging, to tell you the truth.
No question about that. And when I think about, of course, how we go about, this process, the thing that has stood out to me that I think, whether it was the MIAA trying to continue to find a way, until obviously the governor completely shut down this year, to keep extending the possibility of a spring sports season, or people not jumping right away to just go to virtual graduations or virtual awards nights, maintaining some form of hope for students, I feel like has been such an important key in trying to keep them up, keep them engaged, keep them invested, and keep them coming back every day. Because I think it's hard enough for all of us who have been going through the process as adults. If you just completely take away any form of hope, and be like, no, the rest of your career is going to be through this computer, I think it's awfully difficult for people to stomach, and certainly for students to be able to deal with.
Yeah, I agree with you, Todd. The one thing I would say, though, is, like, to me, it's like spacing things out. Where I have an issue is you're saying, okay, we're going to start this week. Nope, we're going to start next week. Nope, we're going to start the week over. I think, really looking at the information that's given to you, and then, processing and coming up with a plan. What is the best timetable? Because I also think, you're getting kids' hopes up, and then all of a sudden it's yanked away from them. So, I mean, to me, it's a two-way street. um, and this, graduation's been very interesting, how to prepare for that. You know, and I know Jeremy, we've had a lot of dialogue, a lot of conversation. I know he's had a lot of conversations with, other principals throughout the state. And where I think people need to really, before anybody makes a decision based on what they think is best for their school in these times, I honestly think people have got to come together, to not have a plan and say, okay, we're just going to have graduation July 25th. It's going to be outdoors, and we're going to do the best we can. And all of a sudden it comes July 25th and we're still in this state. So, my feeling with all that is, people need to communicate who make those decisions, and really come up with a foolproof plan. How you're going to handle, whether it's graduation, the prom, these awards nights. I mean, because unfortunately there are things we just aren't going to be able to do. And to, say we're doing it this day, and then all of a sudden we get to that day and it's like, we're not doing it. Now we got to figure out something else. And what we've done at Fitchburg High School, we've come up with like probably three good scenarios how we're going to deal with graduation. We have 2 dates, but we also have plans in place in case we're in the same situation. This is how we're going to do it. And, again, he's gathered a lot of information, not only from the Midwatch principals, but also throughout the state. And then we actually not sat down, but we had a video chat with students and asked them what they felt. And he did a survey to parents, and, he did an unbelievable job covering every avenue, in trying to, have answers for questions that people are going to have, and, be prepared that this is what we're going to do if we can't do this. So that, people are aware of what's going to happen if we can't have graduation at Crocker Field. This is how we're going to do it. and and we're doing the same thing with our, we have a huge alumni scholarship night, and we're doing the same thing. This is our plan for that, where we recognize kids that get alumni scholarships, and the same thing with our senior awards night. We have so many traditions here that, like, our Gold F banquet that's not happening, our senior awards, and we're trying to do something with the relays. You're talking hundreds of years of traditions, and I think that's what, why our graduation, is so special for our kids, is all the events that have built up, that have been going on way before, myself and many people. This is going on back, when Fitchburg High School was first, originated and came into place. So, it's coming up with a proof and allowing, people to also vent. We get a lot, give them the opportunity, the kids, to vent, like, what, how they're feeling about what's going on. So how can we make it, a positive night for them, a positive day that, they can look back and, they're going to be part of history.
Indeed, they will. You guys had actually an introduction of a little bit of new history along the way, something maybe that allowed, to take a little bit of that pressure off, as you just had a class of 2020 kind of senior farewell parade organized, at the building. It was covered well, both on FATV and elsewhere on social media from some of the news reporters. Talk about what that event was like. It was definitely very different looking than anything we had seen, but seemed like it was well attended by both your staff, your students, and obviously they seemed excited to participate and at least get together in some capacity, if even distant.
Yeah, it was great, and it was the kids actually came up with the idea, because it was the night it was supposed to be prom night. So they asked if they could, do a parade around the school, and our class advisors, Patty Kelly and Barry Walker, really organized it, and the turnout of teachers was amazing. There was, I would have to say 80% of our teachers on a Saturday. Then again, they probably didn't have much else to do, but but they're there for our kids, and they had made signs, and they really made the kids feel special. I swear they must have gone around the school 4 or 5 times, and there were some interesting cars coming in. We had a parade of 3 or 4 cars for this, couple young females with some nice loud music being played, and kids had signs, and just it was special, and they deserved it. I mean, so it's amazing. They have some great ideas, and again, it was very well attended by our great staff. But our staff is unbelievable when it comes to supporting our kids, and and making sure that they get what they need, and the kids needed that. They need some closure, because again, graduation scheduled for this date, but in reality, if we're not able to physically do it at Crocker Field, then this was a great piece for them to carry with them for the rest of their lives.
Something that has really stood out to me, for a class, in the class of 2020 and students broadly at this time, that we always talk about is, they're digital natives, and they've grown up in this, virtual environment, and they play the video games, and they do all these things, and we feel like they get lost in that. Universally, regardless of what school district I've spoken to, whether it's my own or others, through this program, the class of 2020, painted with a broad brush, has, basically said one thing in one voice, and that is, we all want our in-person graduation. So for as much as they all, do, spend a lot of time in a virtual environment, they have all said in every district they don't want a virtual graduation if they can avoid it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely, and I don't blame them. They've watched, since they walked into high schools, as freshmen, they've seen, you know, you know, upperclassmen, even some of their friends graduate, and what a special night it is. And again, I mean, our graduation, I don't, I think we do it as good as anybody. With our graduation, and the traditions that we have at Fitchburg High School that go on for hundreds of years. I mean, they want to be a part of that, and I agree with them. I mean, I'm hoping that that they do have the opportunity, whether it looks differently, but they're able to cross the stage, get their diploma, and have some closure to their high school career as they move on to hopefully bigger and better things. But Yeah, I mean, I just saw in the news they're signing petitions, and it's become very interesting. But I know what graduation means to us as a faculty too. Like that's a big day for everybody, because we've taught these kids and watched them grow as students, but more importantly as young men and women. And we want to be there, that night when they get their diploma and become alumni. And for a lot of our students, it's that a lot of our students are the first time generation. They're the first one to graduate high school. So not only is it a big deal for the kids, but it's also a big event for the parents. So you know I'm just hoping that they have the opportunity, whether in whatever capacity, that they're able to physically graduate from high school and walk out there a proud member of our alumni.
And hopefully keep coming back for many years to come. Fitchburg High School assistant principal and head football coach Tom DiGeronimo, thank you so much for joining us here on Press Row.
Todd, it's always a pleasure. Thank you, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Indeed, hopefully soon and in person for a future.
I have one more question, Todd.
Yes,
did you, Mike Pellin would probably ask you that, but did you wear that sweatshirt for me today?
Absolutely. I had
All right.
a little red today. I had a scholarship committee meeting earlier as well. So it is widely known, obviously, my number of years here in Leominster, I did not wear a lot of red. And then I went to work for a school in Watertown that are also the Red Raiders. A fitting irony for a long life,
Yeah,
to say the least. But
absolutely.
Yes, he would, and hopefully I made him proud. Sprinkle a little red in there along.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Tom DiGeronimo, assistant.
Thanks for having me, Todd. Good talking to you.
Great talking to you as well. Like, subscribe, and be a part of these broadcasts here on Press Row, here on Rivalry Family Media. We thank all of you so very much for being a part of another edition of Press Row. For Tom DiGeronimo, I am Todd Robbins, saying thank you so very much for being a part of our family. And until next time, so long, everybody.